Hey, what's up? My name is Steve. This is Robot. We're here at Vespa Motorsport, also known as Scooter West in San Diego. We're a Malossi distributor. We love all the stuff that they make. We love Vespas, so we've got a new thing to show you. The Vespa 250s and 300s, I believe this thing will work on. I think it's more geared for the 300s, to be honest.
Actually, yeah, it just only works with 300.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
That's okay.
this is basically the thing that plugs into the fuel injection, and this allows you to kind of manually override some of the computer settings. I think that's what it does. Robot's gonna give us a little bit more of a technical explanation. This came out or hit North America maybe 6 months ago or something like that. We had the opportunity to install one on heavily modified and performance out Vespa 300 that we have at the shop. We've done it for a couple other customers that have some pretty built up motors and stuff with the Malossi cylinder kits and Malossi heads. Anyhow, the part number on this fuel controller is M like Malossi 5514780. Again, that's M5514780. Robot, we all know he's our technical genius. He's the guy that can explain this probably better than anybody else in North America. So let's see what he's got to say about it. Robot.
All right. This is definitely a must if you're going to build up one of these motors with a Malossi cylinder head, Malossi cylinder, and a performance exhaust, and a variator that ends up allowing your engine to turn at higher RPMs. It's a must to install this because I've seen them run so lean that they actually end up burning the plug up with the stock setting. If you're just going to use the stock exhaust, this will also work with the stock exhaust. This will also has maps for if you're going to run a stock cylinder, stock exhaust, stock cylinders, stock head with a performance exhaust, such as the Akrapovic. Basically, you see this little maps potentiometer. If you have it set to 0, that's like you're just putting on a stock bike, and it will basically do two things: allow you to modify your fueling at low throttle ranges, mid throttle range, and high throttle range. And it also bumps up your rev limiter. I think it's 1500 RPMs or 2000 RPMs. So technically a little higher speed. You might wear out the motor a little bit quicker if you're going to be running the motor all the time at a speed above the intended red line. But it does do that, and that's something that's unique about this product. A lot of the other fuel control modules, they were just kind of dumb fuel control modules. All they do is look at the RPMs and the fueling going in and then just modify the signal. The problem with the fuel injection on these Vespas is they rely heavily on the O2 sensor, the operating mode called closed loop, which basically tries to run the motor mostly at the stoichiometric ratio, which is where O2 sensor does most of its sensing, its flip-flop sensing. This thing actually does some overriding because it actually talks to the ECU through the diagnostic connector, and that's how it also can modify the ignition timing and your rev limiter because it talks to the ECU through that diagnostic connector.
You say, sorry to cut you off, Robot, I know you're on a roll there, and that was great info, but you say it's a must for any bike, say, with an exhaust, and that's because commonly let me try to explain this. Would that say, for example, eliminate that like popping on deceleration
a little
that people
bit
mention when they've got a performance exhaust?
Yeah.
It just gives you the ability to adjust it, right?
Adjust. Obviously, if you're gonna tune this to the nth degree, you might want to consider spending some money on some dyno time, and you can run the scooter at different RPMs on a dyno at various loads and make manual adjustments to these potentiometers, to kind of just fine tune it in, and somebody that, as a dyno operator can give you some advice on typical air fuel ratios they would see out of your exhaust gas to get the optimum power and best running of an engine. As for the maps again, there's like the basically 4 maps: 0, 1, 2, 3. 0 again was for the stock setup. 1 was for a stock cylinder setup, stock cylinder head. But if you have an Akrapovic or any sort of performance pipe, it's a little more optimized for a freer flowing pipe. Map 2 would be ideal for this bike that we're building. Basically, it's got all the Malossi top end components, but we're running a stock pipe. And then map 3 is if you have the Malossi components and a performance pipe. In the paper, there's a couple things that you need to do to calibrate it. just need to read up in there. It's basically you set some of these potentiometers to various positions, and you basically set your throttle positions. It's basically so this thing knows what your different throttle positions are, and it goes over that. Make sure you just read it really carefully and watch the LEDs and go over those steps to program this correctly.
I must say Malossi's come a long ways in their technical documentation for like a English speaking country. So the stuff's actually pretty well written. You can kind of see there's high resolution color pictures that shows the installation. Obviously a guy like Robot, this stuff is pretty intuitive. Comes to it naturally for most of us. We're a little bit lost, but hopefully this video will be very helpful. You said, stepping back to it's got different map settings. You said 0 through 3. That's basically preset settings, so you don't have to play around with this too much yourself.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Ideally, and you could leave all these at 0 and just pick one of those 4 maps that's closely matches your setup, and you'll be pretty close to optimum running. Obviously if you want to tweak it to the nth degree, dyno time and playing with your potentiometers on here will get you a little bit more. But one of the biggest feature that a lot of people want out of this is the rev limiter, moving that rev limiter higher, so you get a higher top speed. Allows you to turn the motor a little higher, and these motors actually do make power at the very high RPMs. They do pretty good at making power. So if you tune your variator at those high RPMs with the aid of this, you could make a quite a fast 300 cc scooter. His is pretty tuned out. I don't have the latest dyno charts, but actually you could throttle it and it will do a wheelie. Like you don't even have to pull up on the handlebars, but basically just whack the gas and it will just come right up. I mean, it's pretty dang powerful, and it will hit like a genuine 100 miles an hour with the variator setup that we have. Obviously you got to find a pretty long, flat straightaway to do that, but it will hit the genuine ton. Can't do that with any stock setup scooter, I'll tell you that.
All right, so we're back with Robot, and we're talking again about the fuel controller for the 300cc motors. And we just happen to be doing engine upgrade on the 300 Super, and we kind of wanted to show you, with the engine out of the way, a couple tips about installing this. And keep in mind, you don't need to remove the engine to install this. In this case, it makes it a lot easier for us, but mostly this is a good way to kind of visualize and point out what needs to go where in order to install this thing. And again, very detailed instructions included with this. And don't be overwhelmed with all these connectors. They plug right into stuff, right?
Yeah, it's basically four things that need to be tapped. This is at your ignition coil. The ignition coils on the 250 and 300 is quite buried. You see here's a spark plug cap. The actual wire leads up into the frame really close to where the rear of the battery is. And you'll find the 2-pin connector way back there, and it's quite difficult to do with the engine into bike. You'd actually want to take the floorboard off to do this connection if you're going to leave the engine in the bike.
Got it.
But this basically plugs into your coil, and then the connector originally plugged into the coil plugs into this. So it's just tapping into your ignition signal. These pair, this is your fuel injection connection. So that plugs into your fuel injector. The original connector that plugged in your fuel injector would plug into this. Very easy to do because it's right on the top of the motor. And this is your ground terminal. You can ground it right at the ECU or any of the other 6mm fasteners that are on the engine for a good ground. And the last connection actually comes up, in the back. I would say it's about right back here on your right side of the frame, and it's got the 3-pin diagnostic connector. And there's going to be a cap over that connection. You pull that cap off and plug this in there, and that's how it actually talks to the ECU, to do some of the tricks it does, and also for throttle position and some other data that this thing needs in order to do its operations.
So again, in closing, this is the latest and greatest from Malossi. Overrides the rev limiter, allows the motor to turn higher RPMs. It's got 4 different preset settings for different levels of stock, slightly modified, heavily modified. Pretty easy to install.
It works pretty good.
Had great success with it, and we've installed it I think 3 or 4 times in the service department over here in the last couple months. I don't know what else to say, but yeah, good item. Thanks, Malossi.
And one more thing, there's two other ones out there. There's a Forcemaster 2 for the BV350. Not really any cylinder kits, but there's mufflers and variators, upgrades for the BV350, but they do make one for the BV350, Forcemaster 2, so it's the advanced model that hooks into the diagnostic connector and talks to the ECU. For the LX, with if you put a cylinder kit, you buy the whole cylinder kit. It comes with the earlier Forcemaster, but it's programmed specifically for the LX S150IE, but it's the Forcemaster 1. It doesn't actually talk to the ECU, so it doesn't modify your rev limit. It's a little touchier on the fuel controlling. You know, if you change altitude, it may run too rich, but it's definitely a good upgrade. If you buy the Malossi kit for the 150 fuel injected, you actually get this with it, you know, the Forcemaster 1 that's specific to the 150 engine.
And I guess I keep going on and on, but one final thing. Earlier on in the intro, Robot was talking about how if you really, really, really want to fine tune your bike, ultimately, you really do need to find a dyno shop. You kind of say that and people are like, oh man, that doesn't exist. You'd be surprised once you start looking around. I mean, any major city is probably going to have, you know, a motorcycle specific dyno shop. That's all they do, where they'll do dyno time and they'll basically charge a certain amount per hour. But those guys that run those machines, you know, they know how to read the data that gets spit out from the different sensors and stuff like that. And it sounds crazy to do that on a scooter, but we're dealing with modern fuel injected stuff, and that's just basically what you have to do to really, really, really fine tune these things down to a final T.
Mm-hmm. A little plug for my brother in Las Vegas.
That's right.
He works for Las Vegas Dyno Tech, and his claim to fame is he's probably got more scooters on his dyno than any other dyno in the United States. I couldn't say that about Germany because I'm sure there's scooter-specific dyno shops, but
yeah, I mean, we're in San Diego, and I mean, I think there's what, like 3 or 4 different motorcycle dyno shops or something like that. So, you know, a pretty good-sized city, but you know, you kind of venture to believe that, you know, any city, you know, remotely sized as San Diego is going to have at least a few options for you. But yeah, do check out Crazy Uncle Scott at Las Vegas Dyno Tech. All right, signing off. Thanks, Malossi. Thanks for watching. See you soon.